Sports, and as those in the chat room say, it's con time. Sam Conn, theathletic.com, joins us on 365 Sports. Sam, thank you very, very much. So what are your thoughts about this PayPal, Venmo, and at least a little more scratch for the Big Ten's going to get some too, and also the Big 12?
Well, I think it's a functional thing, right? We all have to figure out how to pay the athletes. I guess you got to figure out the mechanism to do that. So, hey, in this era where everybody's trying to generate extra revenue streams to make up for the line item that is paying players now directly, that's another way to do it, I suppose. So announce your big sponsorship and all that. I know there's conferences and teams are going to use all different ones. Obviously, the conference-wide thing, that was interesting because I did not know it was going to be a conference-wide thing, potentially, that the same conference would use the same mechanism. But there are a lot of services that programs use to do different things, from scheduling, recruiting, scouting, and then NIL is another thing. And so that kind of can vary program to program. So it's interesting to see that the conferences are doing joint deals to make sure that all the programs in their conferences use it.
What do you think will be the big change for Texas State in the Pac-12 as opposed to staying in the Sun Belt?
I think it's just going to be travel to different places. Right now, I don't feel like Texas State has a lot of natural rivals in the Sun Belt. They don't have any other Texas schools in there, so that's going to certainly be the case in the Pac-12. So I think it's just a lot of different travel, probably more money, because you're not going to make the move unless it's more money from your media rights deal. So that's a boost. And, the chance to, depending on what the TV deal looks like, which I know we saw it announced, but I'd like to see how the games get slotted, when they're going to get broadcast, how many midweek games or weeknight games are you talking about in this deal. How that falls out really matters a lot, because that's exposure for your program. How many times are you going to be on linear? How many times are you going to be on a weeknight where you have an exclusive window, like on a Thursday or Friday night, and so on. So I think those are the biggest things to keep an eye on for that program, because they need all the exposure they can get.
So it looks like they're off to the Pac, and we'll hear that probably in the coming days. Does that leave Tarleton as kind of like that next team that's seemingly trying to get their resources together and then and make a push to try to jump up another level? I mean, we've seen SMU do it in the last couple of years. Now Texas State. Is Tarleton the next one in the state of Texas, you think, that might try to make some moves?
Yeah, I think so. They've been the one that's been most aggressive. They've been willing to spend on facilities. They've been willing to hire notable coaches, and there's a real push there institutionally to do it. They really want it badly. I know when the last time CUSA expanded, there was a lot of push from that side, from the Tarleton side, to try to be considered for that. And as expansion continues, if you see teams defecting and you see conferences needing to replace a team, I think you're going to see their names come up quite a bit. They've made no secret of their desire to be at the FBS level.
Sam, we know that right now Willie Fritz, and it's great that he has the young man, the five-star quarterback Henderson, locked in, and hopefully that stays that way between now and signing day in December. BYU got their mother load, even though, again, it's for this class of 2026. 2 5-star quarterbacks in the Big 12. How much of a nice sign is that moving forward?
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think we all assume that in the NIL era that the schools with the most revenue and the most money are the ones that are going to win the recruiting battles. And I think we're starting to see that that's not always the case. Because certainly you're not going to confuse Houston as a school that has more money than a blue blood program, an SEC or a Big Ten program. So I have been impressed that they've been able to hang on to Keyshawn Henderson to this point. You still got about 6 months to go. But if you've gotten this far, I feel like you got to feel pretty good. Willie Fritz had that relationship with his coach, Michael Bishop, he coached at Blinn College way back in the day. So I think that's really big. And I think that is one thing that is underrated. I think in recruiting, yes, the money's going to matter. And when I've talked to personnel directors and coaches, when kids go on an official visit, all these official visits they did in June, before they have their exit meeting and talk to the coach, talking about the NIL contract or talking about the rev share contract is something you have to do now. That's a real part of the visit. And if the number's not right, then it makes a big difference. But I think it's not the only piece of the puzzle. I think being comfortable, having relationships, and having a system or a school that fits you, I think that still matters. It may not be the most important thing, but I think it still matters when you're comparing other schools that are recruiting you. And when you look at BYU, obviously they are a little bit better off financially, and they have been able to be aggressive a little bit financially. And they are a brand that's a little bit national in a way. You know, they're a program that people know nationally, that people have seen nationally. They have a national championship in their background. They had some great success last year, obviously, and flirting with the playoff, and I think that was big for them. And so to me, it is refreshing to see, hey, if you are not Alabama or Ohio State or Texas or Oregon, you can still go after these big guys, and you still can win some of these battles. You're not going to win all of them. You're not going to stock your roster with a bunch of 5-stars. You're not going to have the #1 recruiting class. But if you can get a few of those guys and you can do something for your program and they can help lift your program, I think it means a lot in the short term and in the long term for your school's success and branding.
As somebody who doesn't mind watching the world burn, I'm waiting for that recruit that pulls in Texas Tech and BYU and has them as like his final two suitors to try to outbid one another and see what that would look like. So we're seeing all these lists, right? All the magazines are coming out as well. And so it's a lot of talk now about the actual season, which is fun. Mentioned Willie Fritz a second ago in light of Sean Henderson. And I just wondered, what is your level of, I guess, expectation or just kind of the feel you get when you think about Connor Weigman and what kind of a difference he can make for Houston this year and what kind of a difference they expect him to make this year for them?
Yeah, I think the question relies largely upon one thing: is his health. Can he stay healthy? Because that's what's bothered him at Texas A&M. And I know there were times where he didn't play well, but last year I don't know that at any point in the season he was 100%. Even that opening game against Notre Dame, he, to me, did not look like himself. And so now that he's had an off season to recover and he's got a fresh start, he's in a new place, he's back in his home city, does that equate to more success for him? I will say from a schematic standpoint, I really like the fit because Slade Nagel, the new offensive coordinator who was at Tulane when they made that run to the New Year's Six, he had Michael Pratt, and Pratt, of course, we know was really successful at Tulane. When you watch Pratt play, I think the skill set that he had is not terribly dissimilar to what the skill set that Connor Weigman has is. And so when I think, can I plug Connor Weigman into that offense and be successful? I think he absolutely can. And I think more important than just the system fit is what they put around him. They went really heavy in the portal. They got a couple tight ends. They got some running backs. They got 5 offensive linemen, most of whom have Power 4 experience or have a lot of playing experience. And I think that was huge because their offensive line was a mess last year. They really need to upgrade that. So it didn't matter who was at quarterback. If they didn't upgrade everything else around the quarterback, then they weren't going to be successful. So I think they have a chance to be good. I still do have some questions for them defensively because they were so good last year. And I think Sheil Wood is such a great coordinator. That was a great get for Texas Tech. Is Armstrong going to be the guy to be able to keep that going? Because to me, defensively, they were good enough to be a bowl team last year. That defense kept them in so many games. And if they were just showed any kind of life offensively, they would have gone to a bowl game. If they can at least, maybe they won't be as good defensive, but if they can at least approach where they were last year defensively and take a step forward, which they really can't go anywhere but up offensively, then you're looking at a team that can maybe squeeze themselves into a bowl game and play in the postseason.
Sam, which Big 12 team, if you had to make a bet, would be the next one to lock up a 5-star quarterback? Probably not one in this cycle, but the next one to do it.
Probably Texas Tech, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, again, so I said what I said earlier about money, but it still does matter, right? Yeah. So I think when you know what they can offer, can they, and the kind of quarterbacks that the state of Texas produces, they produce 5-star quarterbacks on the regular. So can they go in and be the program that steals one of those? I think they're a one that has a shot, but I think I don't think you can rule out other programs either. I think Arizona State, when you see Arizona produces a lot of big time quarterbacks, a lot of high end quarterbacks, and you see what Sam Leavitt did last year, you see them made the playoff. I think they're a team that you'd have to put into that conversation and possibly getting a 5-star. Those would be the two. I think Texas Tech and Arizona State would be the two. But there's also other programs, like I said, if Houston can get one, why can't TCU? Josh Hoover's had a great career. I think he's going to have a great season this year. Baylor has had some really good quarterbacks in their history. If they can keep it going, I think it's possible for a lot of these programs. But if I'm picking most likely, I'd say Arizona State or Texas Tech.
I was gonna say Arizona State just because of Kenny Dillingham. I mean, like, this is a guy. He is the quarterback guru right now. I mean, it's a constantly like 3-card money shifting title. It was Lincoln Riley forever, and then Jimbo was actually the guy for a while where he was putting guys at the top of the draft. Now it's Kenny Dillingham.
Yeah, and again, it's going to go to his Activate the Valley thing because Arizona has become a real hotbed for talented quarterbacks. They've become a breeding ground for them. So if they're close by and he can get them and he gets people excited about Arizona State football on top of what you mentioned with his offensive acumen and his history, then I think it's absolutely in the cards for them.
Do you think the Big 12 will always be a conference where teams that aren't given much of a chance have a chance to play for the Big 12 championship?
I think it's for the short term. I think it's still going to be that way, but I do think over time we will establish a pecking order because right now we're in such a world of chaos and so much has changed, and how you build a roster has changed, and how you keep and retain talent has changed, how you develop talent, how you retain coaches, and what your coaching staff looks like. All this stuff has changed, and so everybody's trying to figure out what to do, how to do it well, how to do it better than the other guys. And so that gives a lot of opportunities for programs like an Arizona State, who we saw finish last a couple years ago. They went heavy in the portal. They did really good evaluations. Everybody talks about Sam Levin now. One thing that I think that goes unsaid and unspoken about him is that he was a guy that was a Power 4 transfer who did not really have much tape. And those are hard guys to gamble on because if they don't have college tape to judge, it's really hard to project how good that guy is going to be. How many times have you seen a guy go from a Power 4 where he was a backup and didn't play very much and go to another school and then blow up right away and just kill it, even though he had very, very few snaps? It's not something you see a lot. So I say that to say that everybody's trying to find that edge and exploit it. Once we get to a system in the next year or two, however long it takes to kind of settle this thing, and everybody understands what we're doing and everybody's playing by the same baseline rules and guidelines, then maybe you start to see some pecking orders established. And also, of course, that has to do with coaching changes too. Is like if coaches are moving around a ton, then that can change as well. But I think as long as we're in this era, I think it's going to be wide open for most of the teams in the conference.
Sam Kahn, theathletic.com, with us on 365 Sports. What, in your opinion, when you get to Big 12 Media Days in a couple of weeks, less than that now, what are the 2 or 3 biggest storylines?
Oh, well, of course, it's always who's the favorite, who's going to be number one on the preseason poll. And I think you got a lot of candidates. We talked a lot about Texas Tech. Arizona State made the playoff. I think they're a candidate for it. Iowa State, they bring back Rocco Beck. I think they're a candidate for it. And then you've got that next tier. You got Kansas State. Is Utah going to bounce back? That Utah, to me, is one of the more intriguing teams in this group. I didn't mention BYU, by the way, who, by the way, flirted with the playoff. They're in the mix also. But Utah, to me, is one of the more intriguing teams because of the transfer of Devin Dampier and the offensive coordinator they hired from New Mexico, who Dampier followed. So to me, those types of transfers really work out well. We saw it with Bailey Zappi at Western Kentucky and Zach Kitley. We've seen it in other instances. OU's trying it with John Mateer and Ben Arbuckle. I'm curious to see how that works out with Utah because they're a team that we thought a year ago, a lot of us picked them as the favorite coming in. They had such a bad year. Obviously, they dealt with the quarterback injuries. I think you always think a Kyle Whittingham team is going to be tough. They're going to be good defensively. They're going to be able to run the ball. But now you add a guy like Dampier, who's a little bit of a magician back there. He can be a little bit of an adventure when he throws the ball, but he's a tremendous athlete. He ran for over 1,000 yards last year, and he's going to have the offensive familiarity with the scheme that he's going into. So, and Utah's a team that doesn't run the quarterback a lot. So I'm really curious to see how does that fit into their ethos and what they do schematically. How does that look for them? And then the teams on the bottom, the teams that we're not talking about, your Oklahoma States, are they going to bounce back? I'm really excited to see what Hoss Haney has to offer. I thought he was a tremendous recruit. Really interested to see what he has. I'm interested to see Kansas State and Avery Johnson. Is he ready to take the next step as a passer? There's a lot of different storylines, and to make this conference so fun is that it really is truly wide open. There's a lot to like across the league.
Sam, what do you make of Trev Alberts at A&M mentioning that, because they got this big deal with Playfly and all that they hope to have the enhanced NIL deals that would clear the clearinghouse. It doesn't surprise me that A&M's one of the first people in the line going, listen, our NIL deals are going to be the best NIL deals. So just know that before it starts.
So how does that work? Because I thought it was supposed to be a valid business with a valid business purpose. I guess Play Fly Sports is a valid business. So
there you go.
I guess it passes that smell test. But this is when we talked about in recent weeks about how programs are going to try to get around the cap. This is one of those ways. And so you start, I think it's very, it's very prescient for Texas A&M when they did this rights deal with Playfly. This is kind of what they had their eye on. And it took a little bit for us to see it. But now that they're trying to work it, if it can work, then it's pretty smart. Then guess what's going to happen? You're going to see a lot of other schools try to do the same thing. So I think as we're going to probably need a year into the clearinghouse to understand what works and what doesn't, what deals are going to get approved and what's not. And once we get to that point, then we kind of figure it all out. But in the meantime, programs that want to win at the highest level, that have the money, that have the want to, they're going to push and do it, whatever they can to make it happen. And it doesn't surprise me one bit. It's kind of the story of college football.
Which of the programs, Utah or Oklahoma State, have the most to win or lose this year after the years they had in 2024?
I think Oklahoma State, just because we're not used to them being down and certainly not used to them being down for an extended period. I think you could say the same about Utah and Kyle Whittingham, but I think Whittingham's legacy is pretty secure, and I think he's going to be able to go out on his own terms. Mike Gundy, remember, we were having this standoff in December that everybody was kind of watching with bated breath about his contract. And so I don't know that he will be able to go out on his own terms if they really struggle this year, especially if the rival program over there that went 6-7 last year, if they go win 9 to 10 games in their second year in the SEC. You guys know how it works down here with Texas A&M. When one program does really well and the other's not, it kind of ramps up the pressure a little bit, even if they're not in the same conference. So I think Oklahoma State, to me, has a lot more to lose because they work so hard to get to a certain level of program and to be consistent. And you just, if they're not good this year, if they don't make a bowl this year, to me, you kind of feel that slipping away. And I don't know how easy it is to get back into it if you are not going to be a major player in NIL or rev share. Certainly they're going to be probably funding at a full rev share cap. But if you're not a major player and being able to acquire talent at a high clip, and they've never been a program that's really recruited top flight talent consistently, then it makes it that much harder for the next guy if there is a next guy.
Yeah, Oklahoma State had some people that they recruited, players that were high level, but they for the most part found diamonds in the rough. Mm-hmm. They found the guys that ended up being tremendous. Their development was fantastic for many years with Gundy. And I wonder, golly, you hate to see either one of them fail because they've been so good, so long, so consistently.
Yeah, and the other reason I say that I think it's Oklahoma State too is we also know what the succession plan at Utah is, right? Morgan Scalley is the next coach there. They've named him the coach in waiting. He hasn't gone anywhere yet. And so you figure he's gonna step in if Whittingham retires after this year or whenever that may be, and you know what that looks like. So I think Oklahoma State's the one. You're right though; they have developed talent and they have been able to be that type of program. But I think it also becomes a philosophical question in a way: is can you be that program that finds the diamonds in the rough and develops them and keeps them? Because that's the thing is for 2 decades, they were that program, but player movement wasn't what it is now. And now that player movement is what it is, if you find that diamond in the rough and you turn him into an All-American, can you keep him? Are you going to be able to? And that's the challenge that programs that are not at the very, very top financially or not the blue bloods are going to face.
I would, and now look, Mike Gundy's, well established and accomplished. And I do get the feeling that if he were to get fired, he'd be mad because he got fired and couldn't go out on his own terms, but he wouldn't miss it as much as he thinks, given that all the stuff that's changed. But an Oklahoma State coaching search would be fascinating to me in this new era in the Big 12 where there's not a premier program in the league. Everybody's on the same footing. How do you Like, how do you sell that? How do you like?
Mm-hmm.
It would be really fascinating to me. Or like, what's their budget for a coach? You know, like all of those things.
What's your budget for players?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the first question. If I'm a coach and you were trying to hire me, it doesn't matter what program it is, what is my roster budget? That's my first question. Because if I don't have players, I can't win. And if I can't win, you're going to fire me in 2-3 years. So that's the first question you have. And then it becomes, what's my staff salary budget? What's my facilities look like? And so on. But the first question to me for everybody is, what's my budget? And I know from a rev share cap standpoint, it's going to be mostly in the same range. There's going to be a little differences for programs that maybe give a little bit more to basketball or something like that. But again, when we talk about outside of the cap, if there are programs trying to do that, are you a program that's going to do that? Because if you are, then you're going to be attracting more coaches. If you're not, then there's a little bit of a ceiling there.
Yeah, it's not the revenue sharing, it's the other part. And how much of that, again, as you know, we don't know what's going to be approved. The $600 deal, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars in NIL deals, and maybe, who knows, in the millions, 1 or 2 million when it comes to elite players. I hope we get a chance. The NFL, when a player signs a contract, everybody knows how long it is and also how much it is. How much was the bonus? And if we're going to go all pro, I guess, in college football, I've lost that battle. I hope we get to see that, but I wonder if we ever will.
Oh, I would love to. I can promise you there's going to be a lot of Freedom of Information Act requests filed after July 1st when the public schools start directly paying the players. I would guess, and we don't know this yet, but I would guess the schools are going to try to shield those deals, citing federal student privacy laws. I don't know if that'll hold up. It's certainly going to be something we're all going to try to figure out. But I agree. Yeah, the transparency. And the thing is when you talk to people in the industry, coaches, administrators, yes, they all play secret because they don't want others to know. But if you really get them down to brass tacks, I think a lot of them would admit they would appreciate the transparency, because then everyone would know. Everyone would know how much everybody's paying for certain positions, what the highest paid players look like, what everybody's roster budget looks like. And just like we do in the NFL, we know what every team's payroll looks like. We know what every NBA team's payroll looks like, Major League Baseball, you name it. So I think a lot of coaches, administrators, school leadership would appreciate that type of transparency, but only if it's with everybody, not if it's conference by conference or school by school. So that's, I think, what prevents us from getting there. I would hope, like I said, like you, I would hope that we get to that point at some point. Maybe we will, who knows? But, college sports has never been the most open. It's been more cloak and dagger in this sport than just about any other. So if I had to bet on it, I would bet we're not going to find out as much.
I wonder if there's going to come a time, if in fact these deals are approved, no matter what they are, if that also then leads to what you see in the NFL. If a deal, like for example, Myles Garrett signs an X amount of contract, and if you're an outside edge rusher or someone like him, a defensive end, et cetera, will that then increase how much money? You know what I mean by that? A quarterback gets $35 million, then the next guy's going to get $36 million, and the next thing you know, and you might have a few of the Patrick Mahomes great deals where it's a hometown discount, but he's still got a lot. You wonder if that would increase in a rapid fashion what might happen when paying players in college.
Yeah, I think you would just have it just like in any of the pro sports is, if you believe you're the best at your position, then you want to be the highest paid at your position. If you believe you're the best quarterback, then you're going to want a deal that's better than Carson Beck or Darian Mensah or whoever the highest paid quarterback is in the country. And so, yeah, I think that would happen without question. If all the deals started to become public, I think there's no doubt. And right now, here's the thing that's interesting about it is that schools themselves and agents do have this data. If you're, let's just say Texas Tech, they know how much they paid everybody. And the agencies who have multiple clients, they know how much schools have paid theirs. So those people know, but they just don't know what everyone else is doing. They one agency may not know what another agency is doing. Texas Tech may not know what Oklahoma State is doing, so to speak, because they only know with the ones that they deal with. And they call, these guys talk and they ask around and stuff. But again, you take some of that information with a grain of salt. So again, it's cloak and dagger, just like when we were paying players under the table, it was cloak and dagger. So it's, even though it's above board, there's still a cloak and dagger nature to it. And I think the mystery is interesting, but yes, I would agree that it would be nice to know all that, just because I think it would just provide a little bit more clarity for everybody, which I think is good.
Sam, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Theathletic.com, Sam. Come with us next week. I know you're off, and we'll have a day or two off again with the holiday, 4th of July, Friday. And then we will see you in Frisco, Texas, my friend. We'll see you then. Thank you.
Take care.
Sam Kahn, theathletic.com, with us on 365 Sports. When we come back, Shahan Jararajas.